morning, everyone. Dear Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Primorac, dear Ms. Zoric, dear Ms. Vlačić, Vučemilović-Jurić, dear Mr. Čipčić, dear partners, clients, colleagues, EBRD friends, welcome to Investment Outlook session for Croatia. I'm very pleased and excited, probably you can feel from my voice, to be here. In particular, in my new capacity since January 2025 as a director for Croatia and Central Europe, being based in Zagreb, after many years of serving good Croatian clients in consumer and agribusiness space, and having witnessed transition of Croatia, what it has become today. And I can tell you, Croatia is much more than a stunning tourism destination for years, and my management here can confirm that it has been a source of good quality projects across various sectors. But to describe this much better than I can do, I would like to invite Deputy Prime Minister, Minister Primorac, to take the floor. Mr. Primorac, please.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure being here, and I will try in the next 10 to 15 minutes say what I have to say about a Croatian success story. I would like to thank the EBRD and the team for giving us this great opportunity to address the audience during this session and the panel that will follow afterwards. So basically, the Croatian success story is a story of a country that had to fight for its independence in early 90s, where the majority of the infrastructure was destroyed during the Homeland War, but also the private objects that needed reconstruction that happened throughout 90s. So while other Central and Eastern European countries were trying to attract foreign direct investments, trying to compete with others, Croatia had to rebuild the infrastructure, to rebuild private properties, and try to establish the democracy that we now have. A country that less than 10 years ago was within the macroeconomic imbalances, excessive deficit procedure, having a non-investment grade credit rating, successfully transformed to a country which exited the macroeconomic imbalances, exited the excessive deficit procedure in the EU context, but also improved its credit rating, which is now of A level. A proud member of European Union, of eurozone and Schengen area at the same time from 1st of January 2023, and now at the doorstep of OECD. We have just completed the first economic survey a year and a half ago, waiting for another one to be published and completed by the end of this year, and then hopefully becoming also full-fledged member of OECD in first half of 2026. Croatian economy is based on several strong pillars that you can see here on the slide. But what I would like to tell you in one sentence, that Croatia is exceptionally stable, small, open economy with modern infrastructure and with favorable energy mix that you will see in following slides. And Croatia is basically open and ready for investments. When it comes to macroeconomic situation and fiscal situation in particular, less than 10 years ago, as I mentioned, Croatia was having a growth model which was being run by twin deficits. So we had a deficit on fiscal side, but also on current account balance. And we have successfully transformed the economy to better, decreasing the public debt to GDP ratio to below 60%, maintaining the stable deficit level when it comes to the general government on consolidated basis below 3%, so fulfilling both Maastricht criteria, and then also transforming the current account balance. So Croatia is currently, in the last 2 years, a creditor to the rest of the world. This was also recognized by the rating agencies that have increased the credit rating from 2016-17 to now for 5 notches, taking into account not only the fiscal position and macroeconomic performance, but also the structural reforms that we have conducted on the way to joining the eurozone, the Schengen area, but also the OECD accession process. When it comes to the location of Croatia, I have to mention its strategic location in the heart of Europe. So as you can see here on the map, Croatia is easily accessible. Within 3 hours, travelers can reach any major European city. We have 9 international airports and also 6 quality seaports, but also Croatia is part of pan-European transport corridors, and we have heavily invested in highway network, which is really modern, and we are working a lot on investing in railway infrastructure. So I can share with you some news. We have signed the Memorandum of Understanding and the framework loan with the European Investment Bank. The total worth is 900 million euros. In the next couple of years, Croatia will invest to transform also the railway network in Croatia. This is the process that takes time. We have done something in the last couple of years already, so you can see the number of rail passengers increasing from 2021 up till now. But we will certainly, in the next couple of years, heavily invest in railway infrastructure to fully exploit the potential of our seaports, especially the one in Rijeka. When it comes to the energy mix, the trend is quite favorable. So when it comes to the major sources that I want to say a few words about, first of all, the gas infrastructure. We have invested in building the LNG terminal at the island of Krk, where we practically secured the supply and diversification of supply sources of gas. We are now expanding the capacity from 3.1 to 6.1 billion cubic meters annually. We are also manning the pipeline network, which will be hydrogen ready towards Hungary, towards Slovenia, so we'll be also able to provide supply to the neighboring countries. When it comes to oil, we have a large refinery in the city of Rijeka, which is basically fulfilling the needs and what domestic consumption practically consumes within a year. We also have developed oil transport and storage capacity in Rijeka, but also within Croatia. When it comes to the storage facilities, we can say that we also fulfill our domestic needs. When it comes to electricity, the energy mix is also favorable on this side. We have shared nuclear power plant that we share with Slovenia in Krško. We also have a large installed capacities of hydro power, but also what makes us favorable in terms of the conditions, having the shared capacities with Slovenia in Krško. We are able also to develop the projects that are within the renewable energy sources such as wind and solar power plants. The macroeconomic performance and what the aim of the government was in the last couple of years, which we basically maintained, having first of all the political stability. We have more or less the same government in the third consecutive mandate, fulfilling the quite ambitious transformation agenda. We are trying to reach the GDP per capita level, the 80% of European Union average, which we are doing at accelerated pace. So Croatian growth rate was, for example, in 2024 to 3.9%, which is several times higher than European Union average, eurozone average. And this was predominantly based on investments in public and private sector, but also the domestic consumption. When it comes to competitiveness, price level indices for investments, Croatia is a country with lowest investment costs in the European Union. We are 36% below EU average. Germany is, just for the example, let's say 24 to 25% above EU average. So you can see here on this chart that investment conditions in this sense are quite favorable. Also, when it comes to the labor force, we have highly skilled labor force, especially in certain technical areas, people who are proficient in different languages, especially in English, but also working at competitive wages. So in this sense, we also have the competitive advantage when it comes to the labor force. The taxation and the ambition of this government was constantly decreasing the tax burden for the economy. We, from 2016, had several rounds of tax reforms. So now the implicit rate, for example, on labor is third lowest in European Union. Also, when it comes to the taxation of capital, we are quite mild on this, in this sense. Strategic policy objectives and reform agenda in the next couple of years. First of all, we have the National Development Strategy until 2030, which is based on several areas that you can see here, and also 13 ambitious goals. We can say that for the more or less the same government in the third consecutive mandate will be focused on energy, on digital transition, green transition, but also demography and education in order to boost productivity and further boost the competitiveness of the Croatian economy. We are also fulfilling increasingly the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. Croatia is currently ranked 8th out of 167 countries, so on this end we are also doing well. We are also champions of EU absorption, so Croatia is using, first of all, the Next Generation EU Fund, but also the multi-annual financial framework, and we were not fortunate to use the European Solidarity Fund because we were faced with two severe earthquakes that have hit Croatia in two regions. First of all, the city of Zagreb and neighboring areas, but also the Sisak Moslavina county. So what we tend to say is that 10 seconds of earthquake required 10 years of reconstruction. We have heavily invested in post-earthquake reconstruction, both from the European Solidarity Fund, but also from Next Generation EU, and also budgetary sources. The total investment was around more than 3 billion euros altogether in public infrastructure, healthcare facilities, educational facilities, but also on private infrastructure. We are particularly proud that we are front runners of the EU when it comes to absorption of the Next Generation EU. We have successfully fulfilled so far 237, I think, indicators altogether. So we have 100% success rate in this sense. We have also successfully absorbed the 5th tranche, which is paid out. So we are front runners in this respect, working on the 6th one, doing a lot in, first of all, on reform agenda, but also in terms of investments that will make Croatian economy even more resilient. This is it for now. Looking forward to the panel discussion, and I'm also open to any of your questions. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister Primorac. I will try to be quick just to showcase, I guess, so what the bank has been doing in Croatia and how it's not so, it's always challenging, but having such a partners in the government in Croatia, but also our private sector clients enabled us to really, since early days, have a very healthy and diversified portfolio. These are just a couple of numbers. So 1993, as Mr. Primorac mentioned, we started. And today we have our office in Zagreb with 30 people, and we are covering from Zagreb a number of countries in the cluster, including Slovenia, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary. But the focus today, Croatia invested almost 5 billion euros since the beginning of the operation. And what is the most important is really the private sector is dominant in portfolio. As I was saying at the beginning, that this is not only a tourism country, this is just a snapshot of selected clients in 3 pillars of the corporate group. We have a number of domestic regional champions as well as internationals. We have a number of private equity funds, and one of them, actually 2 of them are together with us. We have diversified also in infrastructure and also having partners, and some of them are today with us also the key financing partners are our commercial banks, where we are trying to reach out to as many as possible SMEs as a vital backbone of Croatian economy. So if you look at corporate portfolio, current portfolio composition, see my corporate background is still running out of me. It's very much diversified and very much balanced. So we have corporate sector, which is basically 5 key sectors: manufacturing, TMT, real estate, food and agribusiness. Is one third each, financial institutions and sustainable infrastructure, which is pretty much on energy, on transport and municipal infrastructure. And I'm glad that Minister is now mentioning Croatia has indeed beautiful highways, and railways are now coming. Hopefully that together with the EIB and with the government, EBRD will be also part of railway modernization in the country. But even more so, if you look at Croatia as a relatively small country, probably when we did a bit of math, I know there is no science into it, but penetration rate in terms of what EBRD has invested versus GDP of the country is probably one of the biggest certainly in Central European cluster, but maybe even beyond. A, and B, we have a diversified portfolio of financial instruments. So I think in a relatively small economy, we have capital market transactions, we have private equity funds, we have regional champions, some of them are sitting here, where we invested equity, mezzanine, and not only, and together obviously with the commercial banks different. But more important, each of these companies, these are Croatian managed entities, are all successful outside of Croatia. So this is just the snapshot, and these are all recent transactions from last year, and plus Mr. Orešković will be talking more about it today. Podravka was one of the largest M&A last year in the region, and I will let Robert Knorr, our partner, long-standing partner and managing partner of Mid-Europa, to talk about their activities, including Minar. As I said, financial institutions are important vehicles. We cannot do ourselves a number of SMEs because we are project-led banks. We can focus on certain transactions and where we are additional as an institution. But it's great to see a number of partners, and apologize for omitting some of them, but there was no intention. These were like a recent transaction. One of us, literally when I joined in December with Charlotte and the team, it's relatively new. Again, Minister mentioned how important are EU funds. They are very much important also for us to be creative on the new financing instruments. This InvestEU with Zagrebačka banka, which is one of the largest systemic banks, is important for greening and decarbonizing Croatian economy, but reaching out in particular in building stock renovation in sustainable transport. Again, another capital market transaction with Erste, which is very important. That's going to be a key topic today as well, and Minister is a big promoter together with EBRD of the capital market, very important for Croatian economy. We are trying what we can do. It's a long journey, but it's important to be persistent in this journey, and I'm grateful again for the Minister and government supporting it. As I said, we are also working with SMEs. They are not neglected. Coupled with the financing through the key systematic banks, we also have advisory, which is really important for the small and micro companies. And we have also people in Zagreb who are dedicated and supporting our activities together again with our colleagues from the financial institutions when dealing with certain products. Very important and goes hand in hand, but we are trying to be very selective what is really supporting new business in the country. And again, you can only do policy dialogue if you have right partners, and we indeed had in Mr. Primorac and Prime Minister and entire government. You see a couple of pillars. One is strategic framework for development of capital markets, where EBRD is really proudly partnering with the Croatian government. Another one, the Minister will talk about it, it's very important for OECD, which is remaining, I think, ambitious now with the Croatian government, is the improving state-owned enterprises governance. That is a weak link across our countries, and I'm glad that that's in the spotlight. In all of this, EBRD has been really contributing together with the authorities on the technical assistance front, and certainly when investments are coming, we are more than ready to support in each of the areas. Just a brief snapshot on the country strategy is pretty much focusing on decarbonizing economy, innovation, making Croatian companies in Croatia successful and outside of Croatia, improving the capital markets, and these are the three key pillars what the bank will be focusing in the next period. Obviously, we all see it, the world is changing every day, so we will be adopting also our business operandi to that, but I would say these are the three strategic directions which are really complementary what we see on the market, both with the government but with the private sector as well. So these are just operational priorities, but I would not bother you with that. Now I would like to invite my dear panelists to join me at the stage and they will be able to say much more than I can do, but EBRD has been and will stay your partner for sure going forward. So Mr. Primorac, Mr. Knorr, Mr. Orešković, could you please join us? It's working? It's working. Okay, perfect. I will start, so we can have a little bit of break. Mr. Orešković, you have been not only founder and majority owner of Boskar, and Boskar, I will just be brief, is the company EBRD client, but which is engaged in TMT, in telecommunication and ICT technologies, but also in the food most recently. But more than that, you have been really following, and we discussed this, EU competitiveness, where Croatia stands in that. We heard Minister this morning, but there are a lot of challenges. Maybe from your point of view, what we can do to continue this good trajectory as a country, but also where do you see institutions such as EBRD that can play its role in that journey? And thank you again for coming, and welcome.
Thank you for the invitation, and does it work? Yeah. So it's a world where we don't have too much optimistic discussions like that. Every day we wake up, it's like more worries than looking into the optimistic future. So basically, I think we as a company, as a group, Croatia as a country, we are part of the EU environment, and obviously everything what happens positive is happening related to connections with broader economic and political environment. So we were discussing competitiveness of EU and of Croatia, and everything ends up actually at how competitive you are, because we are living in a global world where everyone is exposed to fierce competition. And we know we had last, I would say, a year that was marked with Draghi's report and strategic directions of EU. And I think this was really important because we woke up from the, I would say, a bit sleepy period where we were not aware what's happening with EU in general. And I think this is really important document that is showing what should be done in the future. But then the next question, which is important, is how, which is also, I think there are a lot of good answers, but the question who is, I think, still very much open. And I think who is always entrepreneurs. When you look history of last 4 industrial revolutions and you see our competitors, US and China, the question is who is the force of changes and development. And I think we should always come back to entrepreneurs. I was doing a kind of search of the document, and actually it righteously points out into the productivity and growth as a major fundamentals for or results of competitiveness. But when you look into the document, a term entrepreneur was not mentioned single one. There are no mentioning of the word entrepreneur. And if you look our competitors, just look a picture of Trump's inauguration at the White House. Who is there surrounding? That's a group of 35 plus entrepreneurs that are driving global companies and development. And then the second very important message is growth. When you look into the who was driving the growth of Europe in last 10 years, when you look at cumulative GDP growth, you will see that out of 11 top countries that were driving growth, 10 are from Central and Eastern Europe, including Croatia really being on top. I think we had like 33% cumulative growth in 10 years when adjusted for inflation. And Central and Eastern Europe was also not, it was mentioned once only when they are discussing energy prices. So I think when we look into Croatia and other countries like Poland and other showing fantastic growth, I think we should look into the countries and the companies that can show optimism for the future, and that there is a huge potential. We have seen from your presentation and from Minister's presentation. I just landed from Washington, and I was at Atlantic Council where our Prime Minister was awarded as a top leader. But also, you know, when you look Croatia and US, what are the interest rates for bonds? It's unbelievable. If someone would ask you in '93, would it be possible to have 3.17 interest rates on Croatia and 4.7 on American securities? And that says a lot. So I think the last message is, together with entrepreneurs and together with a regional awareness of potential for growth, we should also understand that standout companies are those that are driving growth. McKinsey just yesterday released a report showing that only 2% of standout companies are driving 63% of the productivity growth. So that's it. I mean,
Thank you, Mr. Orešković. Spot on. Robert Knorr is managing partner, as I said, at Mid Europa. It's a private equity fund focused on Central and Southeast Europe, a long-standing partner of the bank. Thank you, Robert, for coming. We saw, like, it's a small country, but for instance, it's a country, probably many of you know, which had in the region 2 first unicorns. Infobip, cloud communication technology, Rimac automobili, EV car producers, and we see many champions coming up. So Mid Europa, very much active in Poland, but you also didn't neglect Croatia. But maybe from your perspective, how, given the Mid Europa players of the size, how we can even improve and scale up opportunities in the country?
Yeah, I can say we started Mid Europa back in 1999. Last year we were celebrating 25 years of our existence, and it has been a fantastic journey together with EBRD, you know, one of our biggest partners, investing in the region, seeing the region develop, new companies springing up, you know, capital markets developing, some great exits that we have generated, attracted strategic investors from across the world. So a very nice journey. When we were talking just before this panel, I was telling to the minister, when we started back in '99, we started with a big ambition of raising the first large buyout fund for Central and Eastern Europe. And we raised at that time in 2000, $500 million. It was a very large amount. I remember traveling to Croatia, telling people that our minimum equity ticket was, you know, 40, 50 million. And they were just looking at me and kind of thinking, what are you doing here? There are no such investments. There are such investments opportunities. Maybe you can wait for some privatizations, but there are certainly no companies that would allow for this level of investment. Well, guess what? You know, that was our first fund. We followed with, you know, funds of double or triple that size. And, you know, these days we are, you know, we're investing from pockets that are more in the $1.5 billion size. And we are looking for equity tickets that are more in 100, 150 to 200 million euros per investment. What about Croatia? Well, Croatia has had a great journey. We already heard about something today. We'll talk about it even more. The sizes have increased, but in Mid Europa's case, rather than buying into unicorns and some of the examples that you have mentioned, basically doing transactions that are more than $1 billion in size, we actually, you know, aiming to create unicorns. We invest in a smaller size, you know, still respecting some of our minimum sizes, but then exiting in, you know, sizes that, you know, present enterprise values of 1 billion. Our first transaction of that size in the region was actually United Group. That is a media telecom company across Croatia, Slovenia, and Serbia, and some other countries in the former Yugoslavia. Well, we invested in that company in a much smaller size back in 2007. When we exited in 2014, that was a 1 billion transaction. It put not only that part of the world and the Adria region on the map in terms of private equity investment and generally of investment, but the whole of Central Europe. That was one of the first transactions of that size. An incredible thing that people just quite honestly fell off their chairs. Nobody knew what that was and how on earth we managed to do something like that. Well, we departed from there. We created another unicorn in the food and food space in the former Yugoslavia with our investments in brands like Bambi, like Mlinar, like Imlek, or Knjaz Miloš. So these were investments where we attracted some of the top strategic investors like Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, who invested in the region. So the secret of investing in Croatia and getting the sizes that we need is twofold. One is buy and build, so invest smaller and continue investing in further acquisitions and making these companies bigger. And the other ingredient is invest regional. Croatia still, particularly in some sectors like consumer, has very strong brand recognition across the region of the former Yugoslavia. Many of the Croatian companies in the food sector operate across countries in the Adria region, and we have invested on that basis.
Thank you, Robert. I'm glad that we were also part of many of those investments. But looking not only at the minister, but also at both of you, there is one common overlapping topic: is capital markets. As we know, M+ is listed entity on the Zagreb Stock Exchange, where pension funds had and we had a big role to play. Robert, you mentioned the number of exits, but coming back to the minister, because this is very much close to his heart, but probably sleepless night on this topic. Croatia is nevertheless, even though it's probably ahead of some of the neighboring countries, very much banking centric. 70% of the assets are still bank financed. Banks are stable, well capitalized, profitable, and that is important. But capital markets, we know, for integration, innovation, and more kind of growth to come are very important. As I mentioned at the beginning, we partnered with the government and to develop this strategic capital market framework. You are working on some other initiatives. Maybe, Mr. Minister, from your perspective, what are the challenges? How do you see Zagreb Stock Exchange? What are the strategic direction you are working on? And for this gentleman, when they invest, Robert is talking about exits, that we want him to exit much more in Zagreb Stock Exchange than in Warsaw.
Great, thank you. Yes, indeed. So the capital markets and all the questions that are connected with it are often discussed also at EU level. So we're constantly, for the last couple of years, discussing the Capital Markets Union, potential for mobilizing the private capital, potential for increased investments in green, digital, but also now in defense sector, because it is obvious that banks cannot do that alone. They cannot bear all the risks. They cannot accumulate the necessary sources to fulfill this agenda. So we were also trying to be active in this part in Croatia. The capital markets have been sleeping for, I would say, a decade now. So after the financial crisis, I would say that the skepticism has increased, and we have lost a number of small retail investors. And we were thinking of how to mobilize those private investments, private capital in general, and bring people back to the capital markets. There is definitely a demand for certain instruments. We think that there was not enough supply, and we have successfully, I would say, witnessed this notion and hypothesis by issuing retail government bonds and treasury bills. And we have now, in doing that for the last 2 years, successfully transformed around 8% of our total public debt portfolio, which is now being retail held. So at that time, the rates, interest rates on deposits were close to zero. we were offering the market rates, and both the retail investors were happy about it, but also the participants in the market and representatives of market infrastructure, so to say. This is why we have decided to put up this strategic framework for capital markets development, and we are thankful for EBRD's support in this sense. It is based on several pillars. First of all, increasing the liquidity, but also offer new instruments in the market and work on the market infrastructure, exploit, I would say, the possibilities for regional integration, and also increase the level of corporate governance that is existing in Croatia. When it comes to regional integrations, I can say, and I'm proud that we are doing our best successfully so far in bringing other countries from the Central and Eastern European area and the region together. We are having a presentation tomorrow, and we are working on those countries for signing the MOU that will bring our markets closer together, and to present potentially our markets as a single market. We will also work on developing a common stock exchange index for several countries in the region. The ambition is basically to move from a frontier market to emerging market classification, and we know that we can do that together much more faster than what we would be able to do alone. Our stock exchanges have already signed a memorandum of understanding. They're already working on central depository agencies and other parts of the infrastructure. We will have this presentation and discussion tomorrow. So far, the reflections are good, and we all understand how important the political support in this process is, and we will be fully committed to work on a regional market integration with those countries. And then once the conditions are met at the EU level, to be ready to step out as a region and to join whatever the decisions will be in terms of the potential capital markets union outlay, in terms of all the things that we are discussing, be it the supervisory authorities or insolvency frameworks and other things. So not to be in a position to wait for things to move on at the EU level, we'll try to step out as region and work on things that we have common understanding around. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. So we really look forward, to have this index soon, to be able to invest in Central Europe index on capital markets. Staying on this topic, Mr. Orešković, you and your company got listed. On top of it, you got EBRD. You've been also very close communication with the private and both public equity space. What was the rationale for entrepreneur, founder-led business to do that? Did you regret it? And how then EBRD got into that mix? And given the public equity market is again supporting you even in the local context.
Okay, just to give a few figures for illustration, we were listed on the Zagreb Stock Exchange. The IPO happened in 2019. I would say the figures at that time were, that was at that time M Plus Group. Then later on, we were rebranded just recently to Boskar Invest by famous Croatian designers. And the Boskar is association to the big Croatian white bull that is really original, and it's much bigger than that guy at the Wall Street, and less nervous. So when we were listed, we grow our workforce grew from 300 to now, with the acquisitions that are in the pipeline and waiting for approvals, it's close to 18,000 employees in only 5 years. And EBITDA only on the M Plus, which is BPTO segment, grew from 300 to over 30 million euro. And so the question is how that happened. I would say we were always working by the book and always being disruptive at the time. You know, like in this South Korean film, everything all at once, you know. You have to really do many things simultaneously, being good scholar and being disruptive at the time. So the key is, I think we employed also buy and build strategy that Robert mentioned. Role of Mid-Europe is very significant in that's what was happening that last 5 years. So I think we have really extraordinary M&A team being capable to in less than 5 years, they managed to get on board more than 18 deals. And all of them, I would say, were successful. But in many cases, we've been working together. And I think it's a very good formula. All 4 European Croatian pension funds are now our equity partners. So the capital market was really significant. And when we come to other countries, they really ask us, what we would do to have the same setup. So that's a second, I think, important element. We also stick by the rules. We really believe in what is a policy to have transparent and well-organized company. So we are, together with Atlantic Group, on the list of most transparent governance group. And so you should do everything what I think people are declaring and believe in, including what EBRD brought us as a partner. It was not only a huge message to other investors and to the market that some serious financial group like EBRD did due diligence, decided to invest, but also we really believe in policy and values of what EBRD brings in. For example, ESG. It's now kind of less popular to talk about that, but that's why I want to stress it. For example, gender equity. We have now 48 women at the management position, and we'll hopefully reach 51 next year. And this is not because someone declared women are equal and can contribute equally to anything from science to business, but because we really see how it works in practice. And I would never suggest to have a lady being appointed just because being a lady. But it will be also incredibly stupid at the mid of 21st century not to understand that that's a huge potential for any company, and that's how we grow. The same applies for environmental policies. So I think, you know, these are the reasons how you create a community of partners, investors. It's all about sharing, and it's always about how you create a social capital for growth.
Thank you, Mr. Radošković. And it's true, not only this buy and build strategy enabled us to invest almost 60 million in equity, but I think common share of the values with most of you and some of the clients, and Mr. Tedeschi is here and his group, the same thing. On Robert, I think we realize importance on private equity funds, as Mr. Radošković said, in terms of the governance, skills transfer, M&A capacity in the group. So it's not far beyond money, and we are happy to see also now homegrown or regionally owned private equity funds. But on the other side, there is public equity space, and in Croatia is probably blessed with a very strong community of the pension funds. So how important are they in, you know, getting those funds mobilized and channeled even more for ecosystem and competitiveness of the Croatian economy?
Yeah, I think this is a very, very good question and very important topic. I would actually start with Poland before we come back to Croatia, where, you know, capital markets are more developed. The Warsaw Stock Exchange is more active, and Mid-Europa is a big investor in the country and has brought a number of companies to the stock exchange. Back in 2020, we brought to the stock exchange an amazing company called Allegro. Many of you know it. It's an e-commerce leader in the Polish market. We invested back in 2017 with two of our private equity friends, bigger funds from Western Europe. They needed a local partner. It was a huge deal at the time, 3 billion euro EV, 2 billion equity that was needed for this deal, so Mid-Europa couldn't do it by itself. Well, guess what? Only 3 years later, we listed the company on the Warsaw Stock Exchange at 10 billion capitalization, so 5 times money realized. Obviously, a stake, a share of our holding was sold into the IPO. We had further sell downs. But given that, you know, us 3 private equity funds owned 100% of the company, and this was such a huge, you know, listing on a Warsaw Stock Exchange, we're still approximately 40% invested after the IPO and further sell downs. So it takes time. It takes time, patience, and effort to build capital markets. It takes time, patience, and effort to sustain capital markets, and also, you know, it sometimes takes quite a bit of time to, you know, for investors to exit, because liquidity is as important as, you know, having a capital market. One thing that Poland doesn't have, and we are trying to talk to the regulators, to the government, is to allow Polish pension funds to invest in private equity. We think this is something that hopefully will come soon. It has come into Croatia, and I will, you know, very soon come to the Croatian example, which is a, you know, astounding example. But private equity does help to create companies that then, you know, can be brought to the capital markets. You know, just now in February, we brought another Polish champion to the Warsaw Stock Exchange, Diagnostica, a fantastic healthcare company, basically the leader in diagnostics, blood testing and similar diagnostics in Poland. It was taken in minutes. We actually didn't own 100% of the company, which is a better thing when you go for listings, because you don't have this famous overhang. But we were approximately 50% investor in Diagnostica. We put all of our, you know, stake into the IPO. It was 8 times oversubscribed, with Polish pension funds pleading with us to bring more such companies to the Polish stock exchange. Well, what do we tell them is, well, if you cannot invest in us, we have less, you know, power to do things. If the regulator doesn't allow you to invest in private equity, how can we bring more companies to the stock exchange? If we didn't have the EBRD, if we didn't have IFC and, you know, some of the European multilateral banks who are replacing the local investment, the Central and Eastern European institutional investment to private equity, there would not be private equity in Central and Eastern Europe, because there's no private equity without local investment. You know, many people wonder why the Scandinavian private equity is, you know, is flourishing. Well, guess what? You know, they have an incredible pension system that is investing huge amounts of money in the local private equity ecosystem. And then this ecosystem creates companies that end up on their stock exchanges, that creates companies that expand on a pan-European level. It boosts the whole region of Scandinavia. Well, we have an example of a country that looks like Sweden, that looks like Finland, and that is Croatia, when it comes to pension funds, institutional money supporting private equity. It's a bright example, unfortunately the only example at the moment in Central Europe, that allows pension funds to invest in private equity. And we are talking big numbers. You know, the Croatian pension funds, 4 of them currently have approximately 23 billion under management. They're allowed to invest up to 10% into alternatives, including private equity. This is 2.3 billion. This is not a small number. Well, there are bigger numbers in Poland, there are bigger numbers in Romania, but they cannot yet invest in private equity. Well, we're bringing your example to Poland, we're bringing your example to Romania. Just to give you the example of Romania, over the last 15 months, we sold or exited 2 companies in Romania. One is Profi, many of you know, a supermarket chain. We sold it to Ahold Delhaize, a big European strategic investor, and just 2 months ago, we signed the exit from Regina Maria, a leader in healthcare, private healthcare in Romania. Both transactions are above 1 billion euro enterprise value. huge deal activity that we have created in Romania. I mean, 2 deals of 1 billion in a year. Well, we are getting 0 money from Romania, 0. That's not right. That's not right. If we want private equity to flourish in Central and Eastern Europe, the institutional landscape of investment, which has money, I mean, we show it in Croatia, there is money in these countries as well. In Poland, we get some money because there is money outside of the, of the pension system. In Romania, we get 0. Well, Croatia has taken a different approach, has gone, as I said, the Swedish, Finland route, and many other, Netherlands and other countries in Western Europe, which supports private equity, which in turn supports the capital markets. Our cooperation with Boskar is on a similar basis. Boskar is a local corporate listed on the Zagreb Stock Exchange, but investing in companies. We just agreed, to sell to Boskar half of our stake in Mlinar, which is the bakery leader in not only Croatia but also present in Slovenia and Serbia, so a regional leader in bakery. The plan is to bring Mlinar to the stock exchange separately from Boskar, so to create yet another equity story on the capital markets in Croatia with, Boskar, long-term investor who will stay. Therefore, Mid-Europa's stake will be easier to place and will be easier to exit, and will create yet another opportunity for investment, public investment for Croatian pension funds.
Robert, sorry, but and what comes back to pension funds, investment in Boskar Group from 2019 until now has a 728% return, so it's good for both sides.
It's win-win. It's win-win. No, thank you, Robert. It's a great synergy between private and public equity space, and I'm glad that you really gave this example. To Mr. Primorac, obviously pension funds and all these listings and investments, they require stability, which you managed in terms of the macros. When you look at the European Council recommendation of capital markets development for Croatia to go forward, innovation, labor force, you touched upon it. Obviously connectivity, Croatia has done a great deal of it. But one specific area I would like also to mention, which is usually holding us, many of our countries, and eating a bit of GDP and efficiencies, is governance in SOEs. I think that has been your focus, becoming a Euro member, has been focused on this under the RRF plan. But the organization that you are now thriving is OECD. I think is kind of the cherry on the cake. Maybe what are the challenges? What are the key kind of ingredients in this SOE governance that you are contemplating in the near future?
Listen, before joining the ministry, I was working at university as professor, teaching, among other things, public finance and doing research also in SOE sector. So I know this topic and it's close to my heart, and I know how the not only the narrative but the ideology around state-owned enterprises has changed over years. First, we were bombed and I would say incentivized to privatize as much as possible. Then when you saw the portfolio of other countries, of Western democracies, what they kept in the government's portfolio, then certain, I would say, institutions were surprised. So we understood that it's not only those SOEs that are for providing public goods and services, but also for some strategic, maybe operations, but also some profit-making companies kept in government's portfolio in certain countries which are clever and wise enough to know how to operate. However, this area has been neglected in Croatia for decades, and we are confident that a lot of changes have to be done in this sector, especially when it comes to corporate governance. So in this sense, it is not only the OECD that is pushing us to continue with this agenda, although this is one of the topics that we are dealing with in the Ministry of Finance. We have decided to carve out this part of the former, I would say, Ministry of State Assets and try to integrate it to the Ministry of Finance to be able to focus more on this agenda. Now the legislation is done. The legislation will basically make the country enact the ownership policy to be more active owner of SOEs. So we have roughly 900 SOEs altogether. The majority of those, though, being owned by local government units. We have 556 local government units, cities, municipalities. Each of them has a utility company. Some of them share the utility company. We have also counties. So I would say that there are up to 50 companies that are really being managed by the central government in a way through different institutions, ministries, etc. Now the governance model was decentralized, so each ministry was trying to do something with the companies in its portfolio. We are focusing on concentration of those ownership rights in the Ministry of Finance to be able to better coordinate the process. In this ownership policy that we will enact after the law is passed to the Parliament, we will also provide reasons, transparent reasons why certain companies should be kept in the government's portfolio and why we should divest in some of those companies. We will also create policies that will enable us to set clear goals, KPIs for those companies, but also professionalize supervisory and management boards, enact clear and transparent remuneration policies, dividend policies, and so on. So the process will be much more transparent, and central government as an owner will be a much more active owner in this sense. So I will not announce any sort of privatization, although I know that everybody is waiting me to say something about that. And I'm not saying that we will not privatize anything, but I just want to mention that out of those 900 companies, since majority is owned by local government units, we cannot rely on privatization as a model for bringing back life to the capital markets. It can be one-off. If you sell 15% of a certain company, it brings life to the capital markets for a while, but it's not. This is not definitely a long-term strategy. So we are focusing on other areas in this sense, but we are also heavily improving this coordination process and corporate governance of SOEs in Croatia, because I fully agree with you. This is the area that really needs improvement.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Look, this is a very important topic for the bank, as you saw in strategic priorities. Obviously, governance and competitiveness are hand in hand. We are not insisting. We also, as I said, changing to the realities. Privatization is one thing, but when we see improved governance and all the things that you have mentioned, certainly we are more than happy to also to help on the reform front, but also on investments in SOEs as well. We have 2.5 minutes. It's a Q&A session. If you have some time, we haven't received, this is not working, which is fine. So I would like to encourage everyone who has any questions for our dear panelists, and they will probably stay a bit after the panel, so we may not entertain each and any question. Please.
Thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. Congratulations to Croatia and its government for the great achievements. Congratulations. You mentioned a lot OECD. If I'm not mistaken, Croatia is still on the grey list of the Financial Action Task Force. Can you tell us about the actions that you are taking in this field?
Sure. We don't have much time, but I can tell you that in the last year and a half, we have taken serious measures in this sense. So the action plan that was put out by the FATF and the Moneyval Group in general was completely fulfilled. You can see the reports that are publicly available in terms of the topics that needed to be addressed. For Croatia, they're more or less all largely addressed, and we are in expectation to be removed from the list as soon as possible. So we don't have any major deficiency that we are coping with right now. If you ask me about the reasons, I can tell you that the framework, the legislative framework, which had to do with the sanctions list, had to be improved. So this was the major reason why Croatia was put on a grey list, and we have committed on a political level, from the highest political level, to improve the process in general, and we have fulfilled all the topics and all the items that we were requested from the FATF. We had the on-site visit in Croatia a few weeks ago, and everybody looked happy. there were no commitments in this sense, nor can I communicate something in advance, but I'm quite positive and optimistic on that.
Thank you. Sorry, no more time for questions. You will have you will have an opportunity after it's 10 seconds. And organizer telling me, first of all, I would like a round of applause to our panelists, and thank you again for a conversation. And as you can see, what we told you at the beginning, it's more than investable economy. It's a thriving, small. From the panelists you saw, it's very much diversified. And what the bank has done over the years in the country and also last year and continue, I can tell you we still have very healthy business this year and going forward is thanks to the examples like this. And I would like to thank all of you who attended. I'm really happy that it's almost full hall. So Mr. Mršić is now relieved. And I guess it's now networking break. Thank you.